But for now, I'm going to go live to Canberra and I'm joined by the Energy Minister, Angus Taylor. Welcome to the program, Minister.
Thanks for having me, Sherry.
Minister, first to the news that Bridget McKenzie has this afternoon resigned over the sports rot scandal. Do you think she should have done this weeks ago?
Well, she's done it now. The Gaetjens report obviously was important in this and made very clear findings which the Prime Minister has relayed, and I'll be sorry to see her go. She's been a fantastic colleague in Cabinet. She's been a great champion for regional Australia. Of course, she'll continue to be a great champion for regional Victoria as a Victorian Senator, and I wish her well in that role. I know she will do a great job, as she has always done in that role. But as I say, I'll be very sorry to see her go.
Minister, it's clear that the Phil Gaetjens report had a different outcome, and this is very significant, to the Auditor General's when it comes to whether marginal receipts disproportionately received more funding than other seats under this program before the election. Whose report is right? They can't both be right. And do you think it's possible the Auditor General could have got it wrong?
Well, of course, Auditor Generals look at different things to what the Secretary of the Prime Minister's and Cabinet, Phil Gaetjens, was asked to look at. He was asked to look at ministerial standards, and he has done, and he's made it very clear that from his point of view there was no untoward allocation. It's clear the ANAO, the Auditor General, has found that there were some issues of process that can be improved, and we'll take on board those recommendations, as the Prime Minister said in his press conference. We'll make sure that grant processes in the future with independent authorities providing advice, as was the case here, there's an appropriate process in place as was recommended by the Auditor General.
But just when it comes to that key finding about whether marginal seats received more funding under this $100 million sports program, do you think the Auditor General got it wrong and Phil Gaetjens, a political appointee, was right, and that this hadn't happened?
Well, I haven't seen Phil Gaetjens' report, but it was pretty clear from what the Prime Minister said that there was no untoward allocations, and the percentage that the data showed up that it was an appropriate allocation, and I'll take that statement as it is. But the important point here is that the Auditor General's recommendations about how processes work with independent authorities like this one are recommendations that we will take on board, we will implement, and we'll make sure they're in place for the future.
Now, this was a program that first came into place under the Turnbull government. It's been running for a couple of years now. Bridget McKenzie has told her colleagues that she's been getting advice from Malcolm Turnbull behind the scenes as this scandal has dragged on. Does that concern you?
Well, I haven't heard that before you mentioned it, Sherry, so I really aren't in a position to comment on it. But look, what I will say is I really will be sorry to see Bridget leave Cabinet. She has done a great job, and sporting infrastructure like this is enormously important for regional, outer suburban communities right across Australia. And these sorts of programs are very important. They have to be done well, but it's a big gap. There's a lot of parents out there, and grandparents, no doubt, who take their kids to sporting matches in areas like in my electorate where there's simply not enough facilities. It's an area where I think there has been historical underinvestment, and we've got to see continued investment in these sorts of programs.
Just lastly on this topic, do you think in general pork barrelling, which happens in many portfolios, not just when it comes to sport funding, do you think it's time that old political practice is stopped?
Well, Sherry, you characterised it as pork barrelling. Clearly, Phil Gaetjens didn't, so I'm not going to accept that characterisation. But I will say, that electorates that need facilities like these, regions, communities that need facilities like these, it's appropriate that governments at all levels play their role in making sure they're put into place, and they're enormously important. I can tell you, sporting infrastructure, getting people out there, being active, getting engaged in sport, it is so important in our community. And I tell you, every local MP who is hardworking knows how important these sort of facilities and infrastructure really are.
Now, to your portfolio, Minister, on Friday the Prime Minister and the New South Wales Premier announced a big deal to inject 70 petajoules of gas into the New South Wales market to lower electricity prices. Very quickly, here's what the PM had to say.
What we're looking forward to is seeing further reductions in electricity prices. You'd know, John, that this is not a precise science, but what I do know is this. You get more gas into the system, it drives down prices. That's what happens. And this is about working together to drive down prices, working together to reduce emissions, working together to get the gas.
But then the New South Wales Energy Minister Matt Keane gave me an interview for the Daily Telegraph yesterday where he said that in fact the deal wasn't about gas at all. He said the exciting thing is that $3 billion will be spent on green infrastructure in New South Wales and the commitment to gas doesn't cost a cent. And doesn't involve any money, I should say. According to the federal-state agreement, if the commitment on gas doesn't happen, the only consequence is a review into the gas market. Minister, what do you say to Keane's claim that this is just a big green deal and that you've basically funded their climate change action?
Well, Sherry, it's about two things. It's about getting the cost of energy down and it's about reducing emissions. And, of course, they're the two parts of my portfolio, and what I love about this deal is it's doing both. That's the crucial point. Now, on the energy side, there's two really critical parts to it. One is 70 petajoules of gas, and let's be clear about this. This is in a market of 120, so this is a massive increase. We've left it open to the New South Wales government as to how they're going to achieve that, but 70 petajoules is a very big deal, and also making sure there's enough coal for our coal-fired generators. We've got a coal-fired generator called Mount Piper in New South Wales. It's one of the newer generators, one of the better generators in Australia, and it hasn't had enough coal. Now, what we need for that is planning approvals to get the coal, to get the gas, to get to those generators so we put downward pressure on prices.
But Minister,
government isn't all about handing out... No, let me finish. Government isn't all about handing out money. A lot of it is about making smart decisions, legislative and regulatory and policy decisions that are going to get the outcomes. And in the case of getting enough supply in our electricity grid and for gas for industry and for households, those decisions are crucially important. They're made by state governments, and that's why it's such an important part of this deal.
But New South Wales seems to be pretty pleased about the fact that they face no consequences other than a gas market review if they fail to inject that promised 70 petajoules of gas into the state. Did the Prime Minister therefore mislead the public when he said energy bills were going to come down on account of this massive injection of gas?
Look, this is a deal which is a whole range of different parts. It's got the gas piece, the coal piece, it has abatement and commitments through the Climate Solutions Fund, which will be matched by the New South Wales government to drive more emissions down than would otherwise be the case. It all hangs together, and of course New South Wales has to do its bit and we will do our bit. That's how it works. You know, I've been involved in these sorts of deals in the infrastructure space when I was Cities Minister. They work because everyone has to do their bit, and if someone doesn't do their bit, the whole thing falls to pieces. So I'm confident that the New South Wales government and the Commonwealth government are both very committed to all parts of this deal. We will achieve them. It's a very good deal for the people of New South Wales. It will drive down energy prices and will drive down emissions. And what we want, Sherry, and this is crucially important, is we want emissions reduction without economy reduction. We want emissions reduction whilst we're getting lower cost energy to create jobs, to make sure that we've got more industry and that the cost of living comes down.
To get that extra gas into the market, one of two things needs to happen. Either the Narrabri project needs to get approval from Gladys Berejiklian, or more import terminals need to be opened. Do you have any confidence that the New South Wales government will sign off on that Narrabri project when they had to come, as I understand it, kicking and screaming to the table when it came to gas because they're so squirmish on the issue given the history of the fracking wars in New South Wales politics?
Well, we've left it open to them how they get the 70 petajoules. Clearly, one option is Narrabri, which happens to be 70 petajoules, which will be fully committed to the domestic market. We know that will be the case. The other alternative is import terminals. I mean, there's great advantages in having local gas that's produced locally, but that'll be a decision for the New South Wales government.
But I'm saying, do you think they have? Do you have any confidence that Gladys Berejiklian is going to be prepared to have that political fight on Narrabri?
Well, that's a matter for them. What I have confidence on is that we will get the gas, and that the New South Wales government will be committed to making sure we get it. And that is clear, because that's a centrepiece of the deal from our point of view. It's a crucial part of it, as the Prime Minister made very clear. And it not only brings down energy costs, which is absolutely fundamental for industry and for households and for electricity, because gas is so important in bringing down the cost of electricity, but it will also help to reduce emissions. So it has great advantages. We've seen in the United States, the gas revolution there
well, it'll
has been
only happen in New South Wales,
to supporting
though,
reductions in emissions.
It'll only happen in New South Wales and bring down the price of electricity if New South Wales does fulfil its commitment, of which there seem to be no consequences for, to inject more gas into the market.
There are clear consequences. There are clear consequences.
What are they?
This is a deal of many parts.
Apart from goodwill, what is the consequence?
This is a deal of many parts, and in a deal of many parts, you've all got to do your bit.
You're saying you might pull the $900 million if they don't fulfil.
No. What I'm saying, we've all got our piece to do, and we've got to get on and do it. That's how these things work. That's how they're structured. That's the purpose of the exercise. And I'm very confident, by the way. I'm very confident.
Would you pull the $900 million if they don't commit to if they don't inject that extra gas into the market?
I'm not going to deal with hypotheticals, but what I will say is I am confident the New South Wales government is absolutely committed to finding 70 petajoules of gas, which will drive down the cost of gas, drive down the cost of electricity, and of course create jobs in industry and reduce the cost of living. So I'm confident they're committed to doing that.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm confident they're committed to doing. I think that in the next couple of weeks they're going to announce a 35% emissions reduction target by 2030. Do you think this is something that the government should aim for nationally, and do you think Australia can shift the world's greenhouse dial with 1.3% of global emissions?
Well, you said it. When we're 1.3% of emissions, so single-handedly we can't solve this problem globally. Let's be very clear about that. We have to do our bit, and that's why we have a 26% emission reduction target, which is a strong target, particularly on a per capita basis, one of the strongest in the world. We have historically done our bit. We've met our past targets. We'll meet our 2020 target very easily by almost a year's worth of emissions ahead of the game, and we're already on track to meet our 2030 targets. Now, with deals like this, we'll meet and beat our targets. I mean, let's be clear. This is around $1 billion from the New South Wales government helping to reduce emissions while strengthening the economy, and that's going to be a good thing for emissions reduction. That commitment from New South Wales is not built into our projections, so I'm confident with these kinds of deals we can meet and beat our targets. But our target is 26%, and as I say, we'll treat that as a flaw in our ambitions, and we'll always seek to beat it.
Just lastly, Minister, there's an AFP investigation going on into the fraudulent document or the altered document that was sent from you to Clover Moore. Have you been interviewed by the AFP yet? And if the investigation finds that your office was responsible, do you plan on stepping down?
Yeah, let's be clear about this, Shari. It was an allegation, and it's an allegation that I have rejected clearly. I've made a very clear statement on this in the Parliament. I've got nothing more to add to that. It was a referral from the Labor Party, who is accustomed to make political referrals. This was to the New South Wales Police, who are no longer evaluating it. But I really don't have more to add to the statement that I made last year on exactly this issue. And
just whether you've been interviewed yet by the AFP?
Well, as I say, I've got nothing more to add to what I have said in that statement, other than to say that, of course, I'll always cooperate with the police if they want me to.
Yep. Thank you for your time tonight, Minister. Appreciate it.